So as I enter my 12th season, I find year after year new and different ways in which to improve as an FPL manager. So here are my top 10 tips to hopefully help you guys improve as well. My name's Rob, this is FPL Hall, let's get into it. The first thing I'm going to suggest people is to play your own way. It's your team. So when you have success, it's yours. When you have failure, it's yours. It's your team, your responsibility, your decisions, okay? So I completely recommend chatting to people in different communities, watching or listening to FPL content. Yeah, sure, take advice. Feel around, get connected to the community, 100%. But remember, it all lies with you and find your own style. There are some very successful managers out there who don't look at stats and just go off the eye test, just watch the games. There are some successful managers out there who don't even watch football and they just use algorithms. Don't copy the way that they do it. Try and find your own style, because every time you try and copy away, it 9 times out of 10 will just end in disaster. And because different seasons have different styles, you've got successful managers who last season got in the top 1,000, but then the season before that they were 1 million. So if you copy a certain style, it might not even work for that season. You've got to be able to adapt and do it in your own style. I myself have, for the most part of my FPL 12 years I've played, I just went off guts. I just did it for fun. I just took hits, did whatever I wanted. And then when I tried to be a sort of semi-serious manager last season, I thought, right, I'm just going to, no more emotion, no more guts. We're going to go pure stats. And it's like the worst season I've ever had. It's the worst start to a season that I could have imagined. Because if you try and be rigid or follow a certain style, you're not going to be successful. Try and play the game in your own way. Don't copy. Ignore social trends and bandwagons and just try and be yourself. So tip number 2, don't get caught out. And I'm talking here about deadlines, blank game weeks, and double game weeks. So the season just gone, 2020-2021, the deadline had been pushed even earlier on a Saturday. So if you have a couple of drinks on a Friday night, or you're very tired and you wake up late on a Saturday, you might miss the deadline. But also there could be Friday night football, which means it's a Friday night deadline. So make sure you're on top of when the captain and team selection and transfer deadline is finished. And also blank and double game weeks. Last season, there were lots of occasions of blanks and doubles, even ones that pop up in 2 or 3 weeks' notice. They would have seen the fixtures hit on a midweek, but then when they looked at FPL, it thought that it was game week 5 or game week 6, and it had split. So make sure you're on top of deadlines for transfers and team selections and captaincy, but also when are those blanks and doubles coming up. So of course, I'm going to recommend Ben Krellin. He's got over like 100,000 followers on Twitter. He's seen as the king of the planners and of the blank game weeks and the double game weeks. So I definitely recommend following him, or just try and do it yourself. Look at the fixtures, look at the deadlines, and make your own spreadsheet. Tip number 3 is planning and trying to utilize your chips effectively and efficiently. So we have 2 wildcards, a free hit, a bench boost, and a triple captaincy chip. Now, for example, a blanket piece of advice would be use your triple captaincy chip when your player has a double or triple game week. That is dependent, right? Let me give you something to think about. Kevin De Bruyne, Man City are being fantastic, running away with it. They're on fire. And they have a double game week. So you think, I'm going to triple captain Kevin De Bruyne. Their 2 fixtures are Chelsea away, Manchester United away. That's still not easy, even though they're in a great, rich vein of form, right? The following game week, at home, they play Brentford, who in this hypothetical, they are winless. They're getting smashed 5-0 every single game week. They're looking hopeless. Where do you put that triple captaincy chip? So what I'm trying to say is, going back to the first bit of advice, is play it your own way. But for this piece of advice, plan those chips. Plan those 2 wildcards. Plan the bench boost, triple captain, and the free hit. Last season, another example is I think it was game week 18 and 19. So a couple games before that, I played my wild card because I knew when it went to the blank game week, I was only going to have like 4 players. So I was going to do my free hit there. So then the following game week, when my wild card from previous game weeks kicked in, I had an entire first 11 of double game week players. So I didn't have 11 fixtures, I had 22, including a couple of people on the bench as well, just in case, who had double game weeks. So when I did that free hit in that pretty rubbish blank game week, that first one about halfway through the season, yeah, I only got an average score, but I only had like 4 players if I didn't play my free hit. But then because I utilized my free hit with a wildcard pretty effectively, when that next game week came along and I had an entire team with 2 fixtures per player, it got me a really high score, boosting me up the ranks. So what I'm trying to say is really don't just throw away things like even a triple captaincy chip. Plan it and try to utilize them effectively and efficiently. So number 4, I'm going to suggest a kind of boring way, I guess, to play, but it's starting the season with tried and tested FPL/Premier League players. So for every Bruno out there that you go out and rush to get in your team, so I even remember I had Bruno from his first game week. I even remember it was, I think, Wolves 0-0. I had Bruno in, but for every Bruno Fernandes story that where the player joins, hits the ground running, and is absolutely on fire, that there's a Timo Werner or a Kai Havertz or a Ziyech, right? So it might be a boring way to start the season, but it's better to start a season solidly and then sort of branch out from template players, let's say, rather than starting your season with a bunch of brand new players to the Premier League or exciting youth prospects, and starting and it all goes horribly wrong, and you're spending the rest of the season trying to fight back. So yes, Sancho looks like he's at Manchester United now. Haaland could be off to Chelsea or Manchester City. Messi, as of right now, is a free agent. Barcelona can't even sign him. Could he be going to Man City? I'd be lying if I say I wasn't tempted to bring them in if they were in the Premier League, of course. But the Premier League is different. Look at Werner. He was killing it in the Bundesliga. Comes to Premier League, has not adapted. Remember, it's a foreign country, foreign culture, foreign language. So maybe don't start game week 1 with these kinds of players. Start with players who, for the last 2 or 3 seasons, have put points on the board. So yes, I know that it's not particularly exciting, but starting the season with a Bruno Fernandes or a Mo Salah or even a Jamie Vardy, who is a bit more expensive again this season, but it's players that have year in, year out, gone out there and picked up FPL points. Now, there's no guarantee whatsoever that they are going to start this season the same as they've done the previous 2 or 3. But you're increasing your odds of that using players that have shown what they can do in the Premier League and in FPL. Last season, I myself started with, I think I had Havertz and Timo Werner. And it was a nightmare because I just chose players based off their hype. I hadn't really watched them in the Bundesliga. I watched some clips and highlights on YouTube, which I can look like a superstar if I put some highlight clips together, right? So I know it's not the most exciting piece of advice, but just for me personally, starting the season with players who are settled into the Premier League, I think is the way to go. Because like I said, starting with a more solid base and then branching out to those exciting new kind of players, that might be, I think, the more sensible way to play. So point number 5, it's about effective ownership, and it's ignoring effective ownership to an extent. So the end of the game, the goal that you're aiming for is to have the most points in FPL, right? You want the players that get you the points. Doesn't matter how much they are. It doesn't matter how many people own them. It matters how many points they get, but to an extent with effective ownership. So here is the idea. You can either gamble it or you can play safe. So if, for example, let's take Bruno Fernandes, his effective ownership, because Manchester United is an extremely popular football club, and Bruno Fernandes is a high-ranking FPL player, but extremely popular too. So most game weeks, same with the likes of Mo Salah as well, most game weeks, people are going to just auto-captain Bruno or Salah, right? Now, my opinion on this is you either have them and captain them, or you don't have them at all. That's just my tactic, my strategy. Because, for example, their effective ownership is 180%, which means that if you don't captain them, even if they're in your team, they will still get you minus points. So my idea is to double down and gamble and not even have them in the squad whatsoever. So if Bruno gets points, it really hurts. But if he blanks, I can make it up elsewhere. But for other people, if you want to play it safe, have Bruno, and that'll cut some of that deficit in half. But if you just get him and captain him, then that's safety. But me personally, you'll see a lot on social media, a lot of people will say, I'm going to bring this player in, and the whole of your Twitter feed will be, I'm going to bring this player in too, and I'm going to captain him, I'm going to captain him too. don't go for effective ownership. If you want to play safe and cover, then follow effective ownership. If you want to take the risk, then go the opposite direction. But don't be influenced by Twitter. Don't be influenced by seeing that effective ownership number. Just choose the players who get you the most points. Number 6 is no emotional transfers and no grudges. No transfers of, oh, I hate this guy, he plays for this club, or he did me dirty last year. No, I'm bringing him in because I love his style, or, Rashford, he's done a wonderful thing off the pitch, I'm going to bring him in. No emotional transfers, guys. No watching a game at Saturday at 3 o'clock and then it's finished and it's like, right, well, he's just blanked twice in a row. Get out of my side, right? Put the phone down. Think about it. You've got almost probably 6 days left to make a decision. Don't worry too much about the price drops and things like that. No quick fire. We call them knee-jerking in the community. No emotional transfers. No grudges. Just when you are ready and set to make transfers, which is the next point I'll go on, really think about those transfers. Don't let your heart make your decisions. So number 6 connects very nicely to number 7, and it's going to sound really simple, straightforward, but I want you to really think about your transfer decisions. And I mean, genuinely, don't just see, okay, this guy's blanked for 2 weeks, this guy's bagged for 2 weeks, he's got 2 double-digit hauls straight in. It's not about chasing points, it's about what are you going to get in the future. So what I'm going to be doing more of this season when I'm saying to really think about those transfers is to not just compare, for example, player going out and player going in. So player going out, he's on a pretty bad run of form. He's got 3 blanks in a row. I'm bringing in this player who's got 2 holes in a row. He's looking good. No, I'm not just going to think about that. I'm also going to start looking at the teams. So not just the teams they're against, but the teams that they play for. So if I've got player A at team A, he's in my team, I want to take him out. For player B at team B. Now I'm going to be looking, so team B, who are team B playing against? How are team B playing at the moment? And after I've looked at that, I'll also look at the matchups of those players. So for example, I want to bring in a left forward or a left winger, which means the opposition he'll be against would be the right wing back or right fullback. I'm going to also start looking at not just what that player I'm bringing in is going to bring to my FPL team, but who is he going to be facing? So if I'm bringing in a right-sided player and he's going to play a team's left side, let's say it's against Liverpool. That means he's going to be against Robertson on that left side. That's a difficult matchup. But if I've got a left-sided player against Liverpool, and he's going to have Trent on that right side. Trent, fantastic player. FPL he's been essential before. He had an off season. He had a really great end to the season, but FPL wise, he's fantastic. But if I'm looking at these 2 players, I want my FPL player to be against Trent, not Robbo. So when I'm saying about really thinking about the transfers, don't just look at player A and player B, but look at the teams that they play for, look at the teams that they're going to be against, and these transfers as well shouldn't really be something that's only worth 1 or 2 game weeks, right? Because then you're going to have to waste another transfer to get them out in a couple of weeks, and anything could happen in those weeks, right? Unless you're wildcarding next game week, then sure, it can be like a 1-week punt. But if you're wildcarding in 6 weeks, you don't want to bring in a player and think, he's got 2 good game weeks now, and then he's got a difficult run. So 2 weeks, pencil in, take him back out. What's the point? Unless you really think they're going to get you more double-digit hauls, it's not worth it, okay? So really do think about the transfers before you make it. Not just player to player, but team to team, form to form, and what specific players are your FPL guys going to come up against. So tip number 8 is connected to transfers as well, and it is trying to save 2 free transfers and limiting those hits. Now, saving two free transfers is just a safety net, really. If a player gets injured, randomly dropped, suspended, something happens, having that second free transfer can not only give you a little wild card for a -4 if you want to take 3, but also it's just a safety play. Now, limiting hits, this is a difficult one. I myself am a manager who takes far too many hits. It feels like, though, the managers that are year in, year out consistent are ones that don't really take that many hits. And it connects back to the previous points of really thinking about transfers. If you take out a striker for a -4, the incoming striker must get double what your current striker gets, or it's not worth it. Always remember it's risk versus reward, right? So, of course, if a player is not playing and you bring one in, it doesn't really feel like a -4. Or if you take out a single game week player and you replace it for a double game week player, it's more like a -2. And you get that second game chance to maybe get more goals. So it does connect with the idea of really thinking about your transfers, but it does feel like the managers that are successful season in, season out are ones that limit their hits. So number 9 is just a personal strategy that I use, and it's one that I noticed within FPL last season, the season before, and it is attacking double game weeks. Now, I've said in the previous point, number 8, about trying to limit your hits, and I'm going to try that myself this season, but I will definitely take hits if I'm not set up properly for a double game week, because it felt like those who took the risk last season and the season before and really attacked those double game weeks, taking a -8 or a -12 to give themselves a full 10 or 11 players with a double game week, got rewarded. You have to remember, a -4 is, for me, it feels more like a -2 for a double game week. If you're taking out a player that doesn't have any game and you bring in a player who has 2, that doesn't even feel like a hit. And you're also getting an additional 90 minutes opportunity, potential 90 minutes of your defender getting a clean sheet, or goalkeeper getting a clean sheet, or your midfielder getting assists and goals, and your striker getting assists and goals. So it just feels like for the sake of -2, -4, as long as well you make those hits and you can keep those players for a couple of game weeks, it's not like a 1-week punt unless you're going to use a wild card, then I genuinely would suggest attacking a double game week. Now, if you've got, say, 6 or 7 players with a double game week, you probably don't need to be as aggressive, because chances are you've already got good options for those double game weeks. But if you're looking at your team and you've only got 1 or 2, and you're looking around and you've got lots of teams with 11 players having a double game week of 22 fixtures versus your single game week with 11, that's where it feels like hits could really, really pay off. And last up, it is the mantra of this channel. It's the idea of don't get angry at the result, just focus on your decisions. Now, you can plan until you're blue in the face, until the cows come home, but football is unpredictable. It's one of the reasons why we love it. And even if your rank isn't going well or your game week isn't going well, if you look back and you think, logically, you talk to other people, you talk to the community, you make content, whatever, and you explain, okay, yeah, I did this decision, I looked at these comparisons, I looked at these stats, I looked at these eye tests, whatever, and it doesn't pay off, it doesn't pay off. Right? It doesn't, we play for fun. At the end of the day, don't go kicking yourself about it. Yeah, I get frustrated. I, of course, get pretty angry or annoyed when things don't go my way. But then I look back and I think, don't, because I chose this player because of ABC. I chose this captain because of ABC, right? So as long as you have really thought about it, then try not to worry about what happens after it. You cannot affect results of games. Once you've made the transfers, once you've selected the captain, once you've submitted your team sheet, there's nothing more you can do. So, for example, let's just take back another example of Manchester City against Norwich. Norwich had a terrible start. Man City were absolutely on fire, and Norwich had like no defenders. And we were all thinking it was going to be a cricket score. It was going to be 10-0, Man City going to Norwich. Kevin De Bruyne doesn't start, Norwich win. And I benched Pookie because I was so adamant that Man City were going to steamroll them. It's football, right? There was no one saying that it was a terrible decision to back Manchester City in that game. But it happens, okay? It is football. It's like Football Manager as well. This happens all the time. If you have a team who's top of the league, they've not conceded all season, they've beaten everyone 5-0, they're playing bottom of the league, who haven't scored all season, they've lost every game 5-0, and then they play each other, and the bottom team wins 2-0. It happens. As long as you've thought about your team, you've given your reasons why, if it doesn't pay off, it doesn't pay off. That's football. So I hope you enjoyed this tips video, guys. There'll be a lot of FPL content coming out over the summer. If you want to see my first draft, it is just up there now. If you haven't subscribed, maybe think about doing that just by clicking that over there. Maybe leave a like and share as well. I'll be doing my streams likely on Friday, 12 o'clock when the season begins. And like I said, a few more videos will come out over the course of the summer. So as always, guys, have a good one.